This ISN about emotional intelligence. This is about emotional sovereignty, the power that transforms weaknesses into weapons. You no longer absorbing negativity. You rechanneling it elsewhere. People may criticize you, dismiss you, attempt to shatter your confidence. Yet you remain unmoved. Because stillness ISN weakness. It is power, and power wins conflicts without uttering a word. Before we dive in, recognize this ISN typical guidance. It is a fundamental reset. To process it without collapsing, they structured it into 3 segments. The first segment explores the fundamental mechanics. How this mental technique converts emotional turbulence into composed authority. No unnecessary details, just exactness. The second segment examines the risk, the shadowy boundary of this approach. What transpires when lucidity evolves into disconnection, and authority transforms into callousness. The third segment focuses on achieving equilibrium. How to maintain tactical thinking without compromising your humanity. How to command through quietness, without becoming empty inside. Proceed thoughtfully. We begin now. Within your consciousness exists a region containing every characteristic you, the refused, dismissed, or suppressed. The envy, the fury, the self-centeredness, the schemer, the fiend. Mental health professionals term it the shadow. But understand this clearly. This ISN is a mysterious analogy. It's an actual psychological function, and disregarding it doesn't eliminate it. It makes it more potent and deceptive. Society conditioned you to conceal these traits, to display happiness when you felt despair, to claim, I'm okay, when you were crumbling, to be compliant, even when your instincts told you otherwise, and each instance reinforced your shadow. But here is the revelation. The shadow ISN, malevolent. It is simply genuine. It contains your authentic, unfiltered reality, the aspect of yourself that refuses submission. When you embrace it, when you stop avoiding your darkness and claim ownership, you become complete. You become steadfast. You become formidable. Here is the mechanism behind this mental technique. Your unconscious ISN, merely a passive background system. It is a dynamic intelligence, perpetually examining, sifting, preserving, and it is continuously gathering one element: rules, guidelines about who you permitted to be, guidelines about which aspects of yourself are tolerable, guidelines about which characteristics receive acceptance and which face rejection. These guidelines weren't created by you. They were implanted from early experiences, from painful events, from societal norms, from experiences of rejection. And here is the crucial point. The unconscious doesn't evaluate if the guideline is accurate. It only considers, will this protect me? So when tears brought shame, you learned to suppress grief. When anger resulted in consequences, you masked rage behind false contentment. When self-assurance was labeled arrogance, you diminished yourself. And gradually, unknowingly, you revised yourself into a vulnerable version of your intended identity. Now, step into shadow integration. Shadow integration represents your personal inner uprising. It doesn't simply rewire your thinking patterns. It reveals the hidden blueprint guiding your life and destroys it completely. It challenges you to face 3 uncomfortable realities your mind desperately tries to avoid. Society has programmed you to display only your virtuous aspects, your tolerant side, your modest nature, your generous, kind, harmonious personality. But here is a fact nobody bothered teaching you. You equally contain darkness, desire, anger, self-importance, dignity, that primal, untethered element within you that refuses to bow for validation. And surprisingly, that element ISN, wicked. It is authentic. Rejecting your darkness doesn't make you virtuous. It leaves you incomplete, because whatever parts you refuse to acknowledge end up controlling you subconsciously. But when you embrace them, when you abandon the pretense of being purely virtuous, you achieve completeness. And completeness, that's the foundation of genuine strength. Why do certain individuals instantly repulse you? Why do specific characteristics in others provoke unreasonable frustration? The answer is straightforward. Your shadow recognizes itself. You despise dishonesty because you tell untruths to maintain harmony. You detest self-absorption because you weren't permitted to value yourself openly. You resent smugness because you have been minimizing your own excellence for ages. What bothers you ISN solely about them? It is a reflection, a looking glass. Your shadow communicating. Examine deeper. That is also part of you. This represents the challenging aspect of integration. It requires you to cease judging and start internalizing. Because criticism often merely reflects your own issues. And until you stop disowning what you identify in others, you will never fully reclaim your complete identity. Flawlessness remains fragile. It involves concealing imperfections, displaying goodness, seeking approval. Completeness disregards audience reactions. It is unpolished. It is unfiltered. It is complicated. But it is genuine. And genuineness carries power. You see, when perfection becomes your obsession, you continuously sever portions of yourself. You suppress your frustration. You censor your honesty. You compromise to remain likable. But that doesn't demonstrate strength. That signifies surrender. The instant you stop discarding pieces of yourself to match others' expectations, your vulnerability disappears. Because now, visibility doesn't frighten you. You've already confronted your inner monsters and harnessed their energy. That is where personal impact begins. That is when self-assurance emerges. That is when people observe you and experience something inexplicable. They aren't admiring your facade. They are perceiving your wholeness. Shadow integration ISN to some comforting activity. It represents psychological warfare. You not healing to improve feelings. You reintegrating to become invincible. Forget relaxation techniques and optimistic mindsets. This journey ISN to gentle. It is painful. It is intense. And it will permanently transform you if you prepared to confront those uncomfortable aspects of yourself. This process enables you to stop being controlled by your darkness and start directing it instead. Let us proceed with precision. Picture someone who instantly irritates you, a person who bothers you effortlessly, the type of individual who makes your teeth clench, your torso tighten, your mind floods with thoughts. What exactly bothers you about them? Their self-importance, their calculated behavior, their timidity, their self-centeredness, their emotional detachment. Stop. Notice the feeling grow. Don't to rationalize it. Don't to analyze it intellectually. Simply watch it. Now consider the challenging question. Where does this characteristic exist within me? Not obviously, not in clear ways, but silently, delicately, in the concealed parts. You may not manipulate as they do. But do you distort language when you fear losing someone? You may not display obvious pride. But do you privately consider yourself superior to others and despise yourself for that belief? You may not show visible fear. But how many occasions have you remained quiet when your inner self screamed to express itself? It exists there, not because you flawed, but because you human. The hidden self reveals itself through projections. What you deny within yourself becomes an obsession in others. Until you acknowledge this, your reactions will dominate you. They will maintain your vulnerability, impulsiveness, sensitivity, and susceptibility. But once you identify the projection, you revealed the truth, and the situation begins to transform. This is where most individuals retreat, because now it's no longer about others, it's about yourself. This marks where ego dissolves and strength emerges. Examine your reflection and identify what appears. Not the cleaned up version, not the edited, acceptable description. Name the genuine reality. Don't to label it guidance. If it is domination, don't to label it calm. If it is fear, don't to label it modesty. If it is self-abandonment, don't to label it nurturing. If it is emotional control, give your hidden self an identity. Not to feel guilty, to accept it. It might be the dictator, the charmer, the frightened one, the dependent, the compulsive, the victim, the deceiver, the invisible, the aggressor. Whatever exists, address it honestly. Because understanding initiates mastery. What remains unnamed cannot be changed. What remains unacknowledged will control you. And if you continue avoiding the truth, it will keep disrupting your life from within. Now that they located the trait, now that they named it, here, it's the insight that breaks illusions. How would my existence improve if I employed this trait deliberately? Review that statement. Let it challenge you. You not attempting to remove the shadow. You relearning to utilize it. Because when you employ a difficult trait consciously, it becomes useful, not harmful. For instance, if you suppressed anger throughout your life, perhaps your situation would improve by finally using it to establish limits. To stop being an accommodating pushover. To stop allowing others to exploit you with their demands. Anger serves a purpose when expressed properly. It is not destruction. It is defense. If you rejected your manipulative tendencies, perhaps your situation would improve by learning ethical influence over others, instead of being silently controlled. Because manipulation fundamentally combines strategy with emotion. When aligned with honesty, it transforms into persuasion. If you denied your selfishness, perhaps it is time to consider, what would happen if I prioritized myself? Just once. Not cruelly, but independently. Because constant sacrifice slowly destroys. And nobody appreciates silent suffering. This marks the critical moment. You no longer responding to your shadow. You no longer avoiding it. You redirecting it. You not allowing the monster complete freedom. But you also not imprisoning it to weaken. You re-guiding it. You re-saying, we follow my direction now. That's integration. That's growth. That is where disorder becomes discipline and obscurity becomes purpose. You don't eliminate the shadow. You don't cleanse it. You embrace it. You stop pretending to be flawless. And you begin choosing completeness. Because nobody fears perfection, but everyone respects someone who has explored their darkness and returned stronger. You notice the imperfections. You experience the transformation. And if you still engaged, you not merely curious. You prepared to outsmart everyone. But this secret doesn't just create awareness. It creates determination. Within the complete audio recording and digital book, you'll learn how to convert emotional turmoil into calm clarity, how to influence without remorse, and persuade without commotion, how to develop a mind resistant to abandonment, betrayal, and psychological manipulation, and how to incorporate the mental authority framework into your biological responses. 15 chapters. No unnecessary content, just pure, verified control. You'll discover it in the highlighted comment, but only access it if you prepared to stop explaining and start implementing. So you desire power? Excellent. But before proceeding further, let me caution you. This journey isn't to a fad. It isn't to personality enhancement. It is a psychological confrontation. Because once you release your shadow, you unleash a force that doesn't behave gently. A force unconcerned with your motives. A force that, if mismanaged, will ruin you internally. Here's the risk. If you awaken the shadow without structure, without self-knowledge, without principles, you want to become darkness. Yes, master. You'll become its servant. Because power without restraint isn't power. It is degradation. This represents the crucial decision point. One direction leads to independence. The other leads to self-deception. And the sad reality? Most individuals believe they are following the first path when they already traveled halfway down the second. Why? Because they mistake recognition for incorporation. They study some material, write in journals, uncover their harmful tendencies, perhaps even learn discussing them. And then they halt progress. They think they finished the work, but they only awakened an uncontrolled force. An unintegrated shadow doesn't announce itself. It infiltrates subtly. It appears as false kindness hiding aggression. You smile and say, it is fine, while seething inside, releasing your rage through sarcasm and quiet punishment. It is judgment masking envy, calling others shallow or fake when you secretly desire what they have. It is control disguised as help, micromanaging others for your own security. It is ego pretending to be confidence, speaking loudly and boasting to compensate for inner emptiness. This partial awareness makes you dangerous without making you wise. You become contradictory, showing growth externally while decaying internally. You see it in fake healers projecting their trauma, nice people hiding manipulation, and spiritual types controlling others through shame. They think they re-enlightened, but they repossessed by disowned parts of themselves. The unintegrated shadow distorts your motives and blurs the line between power and dysfunction without you realizing it. If you were not ready to take full responsibility, if approval matters more than respect, if you fear being truly seen, don't start this work. Once awakened, the shadow never returns to sleep. This isn't meant to frighten, but to prepare you. An activated but unclaimed shadow damages not just others but you, corrupting relationships, ambitions, identity, and inner peace. The shadow isn't to your enemy, But like fire, it becomes either power or poison depending on how you handle it. Most mistake awareness for completion. They identify patterns, journal about trauma, admit toxic traits, and stop. But that is just the beginning. Mastery starts where awareness ends. And to truly govern your shadow, you must become something rare, a dual identity, the authentic, straightforward, primal element of yourself. It doesn't observe social niceties. It doesn't follow cultural expectations. It seeks influence. It understands craving. It perceives threats. It responds without hesitation. The controlled, calculated, emotionally independent self. This aspect doesn't stifle the primitive force. It guides it. It determines when to release its restraints and when to say, wait. That is the true meaning of shadow integration. It is not about suppressing feelings. It is not about presenting yourself as perfect. It is about keeping your internal disorder under control, disciplined, refined, and ready. Here is the method to achieve this. Take a writing tool, this ISN, to counseling. It is tactical planning. Begin with a challenging inquiry. Who causes my hatred? Be truthful. Which characteristics repulse you? Which actions provoke you immediately? Who are the individuals that inexplicably irritate you deeply? Document them. Now reverse perspective. Question: when have I exhibited similar behavior? Where does this characteristic exist within me? When do I secretly wish to behave similarly but restrain myself? The responses will cause discomfort. That is appropriate. Now delve deeper. Question: how might this characteristic prove beneficial if applied consciously? Suppose you detest manipulative people. Perhaps you denied your capacity to influence. Perhaps you consistently played honestly while being outmaneuvered. Now consider, what if I develop persuasive skills? Not for deception, but for protection. To act purposefully, to direct outcomes rather than be subjected to them. That's how you construct your shadow blueprint. It's not personal reflection. It is a framework for strength. You begin recognizing patterns. You understand that the people who most disturb you often reflect yourself. They represent aspects of you that were suppressed. And once you recognize this, judgment ceases. Training begins. This transforms understanding into instinct. Consider a situation that would typically activate your shadow. Experiencing disrespect, experiencing rejection, facing public challenge, receiving criticism, being overlooked. Typically you either lash out or withdraw. You either respond from hurt or retreat into silence. Now envision the version of yourself that has conquered their shadow. Not superficial composure, not the pretense of indifference, but the version of you capable of handling pressure without losing control. They dawn to shout. They dawn to plead. They dawn to explain themselves. They dawn to seek validation. They maintain eye contact. They speak concisely. They remain steady. Practice this repeatedly each day. Imprint this version of yourself into your physical responses, because consistent practice rewires reactions. And when the actual moment arrives, you want to revert. You respond like a skilled professional. I recognize this aspect of myself, but I direct it. This becomes your inner statement, because most individuals follow one of two paths. Deny the characteristic completely. They claim, I done to feel rage. I done to feel envy. I done to manipulate, which constitutes falsehood. And falsehoods create weakness. Become overwhelmed by it. They claim, this simply defines me, which provides excuses. And excuses create irresponsibility. But mastery exists between these extremes. It sounds like, I acknowledge my anger, but I determine its target. I acknowledge my manipulative tendency, but I employ it consciously, not desperately. I acknowledge my desire for control, but I satisfy it with principles, not impulses. This represents the thinking of a disciplined mind, a mentally equipped individual, a person familiar with their darkness without fearing it. It is not gentle. It is not refined. It is not socially endorsed. Genuine power involves complexity. It is achieved through internal struggle. The successful individuals in this world, they aren't always the kindest. They aren't always the most ethical. Those who confronted their personal demons and emerged unapologetically. They were those who stopped attempting virtue and started embracing completeness, because completeness resists manipulation. It resists guilt. It cannot be purchased or swayed or damaged. So let me inquire, are you continuing to perform the role society assigned you? Or are you finally prepared to embrace your authentic self without reservation? because society doesn't to require more compliant, refined, softly spoken individuals seeking approval. It needs people capable of directing their darkness, not suppressing it, not celebrating it, but leading it. This defines shadow integration. It's not a comforting journey. It is a challenging one. But if you complete it fully, you won. Merely endure. You'll transform into something most cannot comprehend, but instinctively value. Write shadow in the comments if you're ready to stop running from your darkness. If you found this video useful, please like it and subscribe to the channel. There are more videos on this channel that will help you become a better version of yourself.